Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the HDR Job Search Strategies webinar. My name is Georgia Riddler and I am the HDR Careers Educator at QUT. And today I'm going to guide you through some job search strategies that will assist you in your journey throughout candidature and also for those who are towards the end of their candidature. Now, the webinar that I did run yesterday had some good content and good questions from the students, and I'll put that into the recording today. But we had more than 50% attendees towards the end of candidature, so I will speak to that quite a bit. And then the rest of the group was split between middle of candidature and beginning of candidature. And I think it's great, no matter where you are on the continuum, that you're involved in these conversations because it can help you prepare for graduate employment. So, what is today about? Today is about learning a 5-step strategy for job searching. I'm going to talk you through each of those 5 steps. Today is also about helping you understand different ways to search for jobs. But what I want to make it really clear is what today is not about. Today is not about telling you what jobs to apply for. And the main reason for that is that we have 3,000 HDR students within QUT and one of me. I don't know your story, I don't know your passions, I don't know your interests, I don't know your skills and strengths, and all of those things help you shape the career path and the jobs that you apply for. So my role is to empower you through tools and strategies to be able to craft your own job search strategy. Today is also not about telling you what jobs are available in your particular area of interest, because I don't know your particular area of interest. So this is around providing, again, tools so that you can provide the career strategy that works best for you. Now, why am I so passionate about this space? Because often we will find that at the end of candidature, our final year graduates look like this picture. You know, they're in a race, they're racing between applying for a million different jobs and trying to find some solutions for graduate employment. And we'd like to minimize that as much as possible and try and have a bit more of a strategic plan. So I think it's important to share with you what some of the common mistakes are that we see of students so that you can not fall into those mistakes as well through the learnings that we will have today. So one of the common mistakes is racing without a plan. We're happy for you to race, but it's really important to have a plan for what you're doing and what you're applying for. We find that sometimes students only invest in advertised jobs. And what we'll learn about today is that advertised jobs only actually represent a small percentage of those jobs that are available to you. We also find that graduates apply for any jobs and they become really busy chasing 5, 10, 15 different jobs, of which they may not have the skill set for all of them. And as a result of that, they forget to utilize their network. So these are the common mistakes, and these are the things we will overcome today by having a strategy. Now, hopefully you all know this gentleman, Abraham Lincoln. He has a really good quote that I think the philosophy is really valuable when we're looking at the job searching process. And his quote is, if I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 hours sharpening my axe. Now, this is just perfect in terms of the job searching process. We see time and time again students spending the full 8 hours just writing resumes and sending them off and hoping to get a response and just being really busy rather than investing the time in sharpening their axe and understanding who they are and what they're applying for and what's out there. Okay, so that will be the process for today. So let me talk you through the 5-step job search process that you can consider taking. You may change the order, you may change the steps, because obviously you need to shape this to suit you and to support you. But here are the steps. Step 1, we highly recommend define your profile. And I've got a couple of slides. I'm going to talk through what exactly that means. But that's really about knowing what your professional profile is, who you are, what you represent, what your strengths and skills are, so that you can talk to it because when you're searching for jobs, you're actually out there promoting yourself, or in a sense, selling yourself. And if you don't know what the product is, which is you, then it's very hard to get your message across. Now, this isn't about writing a big marketing campaign, nothing like that. This is just being really clear about you and what you have to offer. Step 2, assess the market. So that's having blinkers open and noticing what is happening in the broader job market. All right, and that doesn't even have to be about research. That can be really broad around the general employment market, industries, organisations, to see what is happening out there so that you don't have your head in the sand applying for things that just aren't relevant. Step 3, I'll invite you to take a closer look. So that's taking a closer look at the research areas or the industries or the disciplines or the sectors that are really relevant to you and getting a really good feel for what's happening in that space. Step 4 is helping you to get a foot in the door. And that's related to the concept that not all the jobs are advertised. Okay, so it's really about how can we help you to get that foot in the door. Now, all of these steps are part of the job search process, which lead to the final step 5, which is searching for those advertised jobs. Okay, now most students, when they come and talk to me about job searching, they're focused on number 5 and they want to create a big plan around number 5, and that's completely fine. But skipping steps 1 to 4 don't put you in the best position, particularly in an environment where jobs are quite stretched and strained at the moment, and there's freezes and there's lots of different issues impacting the job market. So I encourage you to contemplate these 5 steps. So let's walk them through. Step 1 was around defining your profile. So what can you do in that space? I'd encourage you to determine your points of difference. That is, what are your strengths? If I sat you next to 5 other students who are graduating this year, who are going to apply for the same jobs you're applying for, what's your point of difference, or what are your points of difference? So what are your strengths? Okay, in terms of the skills you have, in terms of the qualities you have, in terms of the experiences you have, what are they? And be really clear about that. Step 2, clarify your interests. Okay, so really think about what is it that I really enjoy, and not just to do with your one research topic, but to do with the activities you engage in to do with your research. Do you really enjoy presenting or not? Do you really enjoy being closed in a lab space and really concentrating for solid blocks of time? If that's the case, great. So really get clear about what things interest you and what you're passionate about. Then be able to articulate your skills. So we know that 2 broad sets of skills are important for researchers. They're technical skills. That's a no-brainer. That's pretty simple. All of those technical skills that apply to your research. And then the generic skills, or the soft skills. So they're all of your abilities to connect with people and projects, to lead people and projects. So your time management, project management, your people management, your resource management, finance management, all of those skills that you utilize on a daily basis. And be mindful that often the language that you might use as a student is perceived differently in the working world. So you might need to take your student hat off when you're thinking about your professional profile and put your professional hat on and think about the language that the industry or organizations that you want to apply for might be using in relation to the skills that you have. Step number 4, once you've done all that, make sure you create your online presence, and you'll see why as we talk through the other steps. But this is primarily about setting up your LinkedIn profile if you haven't already, and then becoming a bit more active. So for those of you who are early in candidature, I'd say to you, at least your first step is to set up your LinkedIn profile and just start building it and setting it out. If you're in the mid-years, of candidature, then it's really important to start building on your LinkedIn profile, making sure your career history is up to date, starting to ask for recommendations and endorsements, and thinking through each of those key areas within your LinkedIn profile. If you're towards the end of candidature, then you're really wanting to starting to use your LinkedIn profile as a networking tool and as a marketing tool. So again, jump into your LinkedIn profile and have a look at where it is at the moment and what you need to add to it. Now, the reason that I point to the LinkedIn profile is because at the moment, I think there's 690 million people on LinkedIn. Okay, and the reason that that is very valuable for you is that there's more chance that people will notice your LinkedIn profile if you're active on your profile, as opposed to just having something that just has your name and a couple of examples of your work history. So defining your profile is about creating what your profile is, getting clear about what your strengths are, and then articulating that through your LinkedIn profile. Now, if you want a bit of assistance in terms of defining your profile, I have got a worksheet. Now, what I will do is I will send that through to you at the end of this session, or you'll also find it on our Blackboard page. And this is just a starting point for those of you who think, oh my gosh, I don't know what my strengths or my skills are. This is just a worksheet that can help you think about on the right side within your research area, and on the left-hand side within your work and your hobbies. What do you really enjoy? Make some notes. What are your strengths that you're aware of? Again, make some notes. And then what would colleagues say about you in relation to your research or in relation to your work or your hobbies? Okay, because these key words will help you to start thinking about what your professional profile looks like. And again, as I say, it's just a starting point. I would highly recommend, if you're looking to dive into this area a little bit more, that our 5-week module, that the next one commences early next year on developing your career, has an entire week focused on defining your profile. And students have found it really helpful to be able to focus on this space and step out knowing their strengths and owning their strengths, because it's really helpful then for your LinkedIn profile, for your resume, and then for articulating those types of conversations in an interview. Okay, so that's define your profile, step 1. Moving to step 2, assessing the market. There are a few steps here. One is you need to understand the broad global job market. Okay, so this is just being broadly aware of what's happening in the world, across countries, particularly for those of you who want to work across country and internationally. And I think this is really important right now, because with the current environment that we have worldwide with the current pandemic, we're not actually seeing a reduction in international job opportunities. What we're seeing though is the invitation for people to be working remote. So working in Australia for an overseas company. So to some extent, there's actually a few more opportunities in this space, because it's accepted in our current environment that you could be working from an alternate country and therefore working remotely. Which gives more people opportunities. And so this is where that whole global citizenship comes in. So understand the global market, understand the broad industry job market. So whatever industry you're in, you need to start doing your research and find out what is happening in that industry now, what was happening pre-COVID, how's it been impacted by COVID, and what is happening within the research space. And step 3, you need to understand the broader world of work, because world of work has significantly changed, probably significantly changed in the last 5 to 10 years, but then even more so in the last 6 to 9 months. So let's step this through. In terms of being aware of the broader job market and what's happening, I did come across the 2020 analysis of Australia's research workforce. So this was written by the chief scientist, Dr. Alan Finkel, to the COVID Commission regarding researchers. And I've just pulled out a couple of snapshots. Again, the entire article is on our Blackboard page, of which I will send you a link, and there'll be some information about that. Now, he indicated that research across industry, government and academia will be negatively impacted by the economic aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. Job losses will unfold over the next 6 months and longer as the true impacts of the reduction in international fee revenue, industry co-investment and the labour force affects Australian companies, universities and scientific agencies. Now, is this to scare you or depress you? No. This is simply to be able to have a broad perspective of what is happening, because all of us, no matter what industry or sector that you're interested in, all of us are being required to pivot in order to adapt to the current environment and in order to adapt for different jobs. So if we know what's out there, then we can prepare ourselves for different opportunities, or being able to step sideways, knowing that we will be able to come back to our specific passion and interests. Now, another point that he made, while international education mobility will remain a significant industry globally, hopes should not be pinned on a quick recovery. Experts such as Simon Marginson from Oxford University expect recovery to take at least 5 years. So for those of you who are hoping for an academic career, this is pretty significant. This is something that you need to think about in terms of your broader career plan. Now, that doesn't mean you don't chase your dream. I think if you've got a dream to be an academic, then that is your goal and that's what you work towards. But just like for all of you, it may require you to pivot, get an opportunity in industry with a little bit of a connection to academia so that you can continue to build your skills once you've graduated. And then hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, things bounce back and you're able to come into academia in more of a full-time capacity. All right, so this is about really being flexible throughout this process. Some other things that are just interesting in terms of assessing the market. I did find this article that was on Seek Employment, just an assessment from March 2020 versus March 2019, just looking at the job ad percentages. So there's a decrease in job ad percentages across all states, which is what we would expect. But it's just, again, interesting to see the percentage of job ad reduction. And thinking about where you're hoping to work. Now, again, there's a lot of remote work happening across Australia, a lot of organisations that obviously, you know, there's Queensland workers that work for Victorian companies that are working remotely. And this is just the space that we're in now and probably for a little bit longer. So do your research. Now, in terms of the new world of work as a researcher, I think there are some key things that are important for you to know, and maybe you already know, but I thought they're important to highlight. So your research skills are highly valuable to the broader industry, but you need to articulate that. Okay, so what we have seen, particularly through this COVID pandemic, is that researchers are being invited into conversations that they previously wouldn't have been invited into, right? We're seeing now for the first time ever, you know, the Premier standing next to, or the Prime Minister standing next to the Chief Health Officer or Chief Medical Officer, having conversations, determining policy, and these are all connected to research teams that come up with content and recommendations that are based on solid research. This is exciting. This is unprecedented in a really positive way. But again, it's going to be up to you to articulate your value, because otherwise, if you just promote that I'm a PhD student or I'm an MPhil student, companies, industries, people are not sure yet what that means and how that can benefit them. So this is part of that. Define yourself, assess the market, and then be able to promote what you have to offer. Universities have limited full-time academic roles. Now, I hope you're all aware of that. I hope you're aware that there's been a significant casualisation of academic roles over the last 10 years, to the extent that we're realising that only about 18% of graduates in Australia secure full-time academic positions, okay, which is a pretty small number. But then you add COVID on top of it, where many of the universities are freezing in terms of any of their hiring. It's going to have a very significant impact. So again, just be mindful of what are the little opportunities that you might be able to get your hands on, and utilize those, and then pivot and look for alternate opportunities as well. Now, we know that you will likely have multiple jobs across a range of organisations and sectors, even those wanting academic roles. So what we've been starting to see over the last 10 years is the academies interested in employing academics who have some academic skills, but have also had some industry experience. Now, why is that? Because research is becoming, or has become, quite important in the universities, and research requires income through grants, and those grants require connections with industry. So there's become this, I guess, greater connection and interest in securing academics who have that connection to industry. So don't be concerned if you're wanting an academic journey or career. Don't be concerned about stepping into academia, into industry and coming back to academia, because that's becoming a little more accepted, and I think will become more of the norm as we move forward. And lastly, you'll most likely change jobs after 1 to 2 years post-graduation. And we have seen that time and time again. Students graduate, they step out, they take on a role, and within 12, 18 months, they've leveraged onto the next opportunity. So again, that means if you're graduating, don't be worried about taking on a role that may not be the perfect role, may not utilize all your research skills. If you can find some alignments in terms of the skills you're looking to build on, the experiences, or even the connections and networks, grab the opportunity and leverage off it. Okay, so moving on to step number 3. So step number 3 is about taking a closer look. So what are we taking a closer look at? Companies, organisations. I recommend that you read any online information about the organisations you're interested in working for. Okay, so have a look at their websites, see what they're talking about at the moment. Jump on their LinkedIn profile. Most organisations have a LinkedIn profile. What are they talking about? If it's not LinkedIn, maybe it's Facebook. Many of them have a LinkedIn. What are they talking about? What are the key issues that are presenting to them, or the key successes? Do a Google search, see what news articles are being written about that company or organisation, and follow them on LinkedIn. Okay. Again, this is just around helping you to get really clear about different organisations, so that when opportunities do arise, you've got some deeper knowledge about the organisation, which can help with your applications. The second piece is identify people who then work for these companies and review their career story via LinkedIn. Okay, so that means if you found a company you're interested in, let's say it's CSIRO, have a look at CSIRO for the people who work there, and have a look in their LinkedIn profile at the different career experiences that they've had. So their career history, their responsibilities, and there's a few reasons for this. If you're in your first year or even middle years, it's a great opportunity to be able to see what people are doing, or what their story has been that has led them to the position that they're currently in. Okay, and most often people will write a few responsibilities that they've had in each of the roles that they've held, which again tells you what types of skills and experiences you might need to build in order to head in that direction towards that kind of role. Right, so that's a great advantage. It's also helpful for those of you who think, I don't even know how I would get into that sector or section. It's interesting to have a look at the different jobs that these people have had throughout their career story. So you may see that they've stepped in this direction and then come back to this position, and the positions have changed over time, but they've built broader and more extensive skill sets along the way. Now, I've had a number of students do this and email back to me to say that it was one of the most useful experiences that they've had, because they've finally gotten to see what people do as opposed to sitting wondering what research in industry looks like. So please have a go at that. All right, so moving on to step 4, get a foot in the door. Now, I did explain earlier that some jobs are just not advertised. So what you'll see from this image is that 20% of jobs are advertised. And we know that 80% sit in that hidden job market. So building your networks and utilising your networks are going to be pretty critical in this space. And that doesn't mean, you know, trying to connect with 500 different people just to play the numbers game. This is about making really strategic decisions about who you want to connect with in order to build meaningful relationship with them, in order to learn more or share more with those people. Okay, and through that process, you'll get to know the industry a little better, and they will get to know you, which is part of that self-promotion. So let's have a look through this. Some steps to take. Now, getting a foot in the door is not about asking for a job. Okay, so it's not about networking with someone to say, hi, this is me, this is my research, do you have any jobs for me? That is not going to get you a job. Okay, the idea of getting a foot in the door is helping someone get to know you, which allows you to build trust and allows you to plant the seed, so that down the track, who knows, could be 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, a year, could even be 5 years. That person might be in a situation where they realise, oh gee, wouldn't it be great if we had someone who knew about this? And you're there, you've planted the seed, you're in their mind. Oh yeah, let's contact Georgia because she might be able to help us with this. Okay, so it's about building that trust and planting the seed with the hope that over time an opportunity might arise and you're in their thoughts. Okay, and there's lots of things to do to build that, and we'll talk those through. So the first step in terms of getting a foot in the door is to review your network. Okay, so is there anyone you know in your network who might be connected to someone in your organisation or field of interest? Now, you could sit and just brainstorm the people you know. You could jump on your LinkedIn profile and see how many people you're currently connected to, and is anyone connected to anyone in the industry or organisation that you're interested in. Now, I can't tell you on fingers and toes how many students will say to me, oh, Georgia, I don't know anyone. I'll tell you what, you know a lot of people, okay? You know your supervisor, you most likely have a co-supervisor. If you don't have a co-supervisor, you most likely work around some academics, even maybe ECRs. You even have colleagues, and some of your colleagues might have had work experience, prior work experience. They may not have travelled through the university journey and may still have connections in industry. So you already have those people. I would guarantee you that every supervisor would have a minimum of 150 connections across the country and the world. Now, most likely, some of those 150 people would be connected to industry. If not, surely of those 150 people, they know someone who is connected to industry. So this is the process of networking. You see, it's about who do you know who might know someone who's connected to the industry or area that you're interested in. And by constantly having conversations, you're starting the process of letting people know what you're interested in, that you're graduating soon, what your skills and strengths are, and it increases the chance that people begin to think of you. All right, so it's worth doing your research there. The second step then is to strengthen your network. Now, I have a note here to conduct an informational interview with key contacts to learn and share. Now, informational interviews are a key piece to getting a foot in the door, okay? I think they're probably the most underutilised networking strategy on the planet. So if you're on this Blackboard page where I have all of the resources, there is an HDR guide to informational interviewing, which steps you through 7 pages of how to do an informational interview effectively. Now, what is it? An informational interview is just an informal conversation with someone in your network or someone connected to your network in order for you to learn more about the organisation, the industry, the research they're doing, how they got started, post-graduation, any tips or tricks that they have. That's what it's about. It's about learning. Now, what you find happens through these informational interviews is that the recipient, the person you're interviewing, typically asks you what you're up to. They often ask, tell us about your research. Now, if you haven't done step 1 to define yourself and define your research and your skills and strengths, you're not going to come across as very professional, okay? You need to be able to roll that off your tongue, a 30-second pitch. So, an informational interview is not that you would contact someone in your network and say, hi, I would like to informational interview you. What it is about inviting someone to have most likely an online 15 to 20-minute chat with you about some career advice that they might be able to provide, or to learn more about the industry in which they're working in, or to get some ideas about how to get started post-graduation. It's a range of topics. Now, most students we're finding are getting really good take-up by articulating how they want to meet with someone and booking in an informational interview. Now, if you use the words informational interview, you're probably going to scare everybody off. That's for you, and that's for you to process and understand. For the recipient or the person you're interviewing, it's really just about having a chat. And hopefully you have some key questions, 3 or 4 at the tops, that you want to ask the person in order to learn a little more. And fingers crossed, they ask a little bit about you. I encourage you to keep it really tight. Don't let it blur over 20, 25 minutes, because you don't want them thinking, oh, gee, they took up all my time. You want them leaving with a really positive perspective on you and your work and your strengths, okay? And your non-verbal communication will be assessed the entire time you're talking to them, because that's all we have at the moment, okay? So that's going to be really, really important. So there's resources on that, please jump into them. The third is then to build your network. So if you have an information interview with someone and you think, oh yeah, that was really valuable, but I'd like to know a little bit more about this part of your organisation or about this part of research you're doing, then at the end you can say, oh, John, do you have anyone you recommend that I connect with so that I can learn more about that section or about that piece of research? And most likely they'll connect you in with someone if you come across as professional and not asking for something, but instead just learning, okay? Now, what else here? Take on small projects, internships, contracts to expose yourself and continue your learning. We have had some students apply for internships that we run here through QUT, and I'll show you how and where to find those. We've had some students apply for some internships and say to myself and Catherine Theobald, who looks after all of our internships, they've said, oh, you know, it's in Victoria, or I really don't want to travel to Victoria. Completely understand. But those organisations were comfortable for the students to do their internship project remotely. And the student was therefore required to promote the remote skills that they've built over the last 6 months through Zoom and through email and conversations. So be mindful that there are a range of opportunities, and grabbing hold of them at the moment is really important, because there aren't millions of them. There are a few, and they're worth grabbing hold of if you can. Now, where to find internships? Let me just stop share on this and I will pull up our other slide for you. Okay, so I'm back to Digital Workplace, or if you're on your student, HiQ. I'm going to jump across to industry engagement opportunities. and bring you down here. So on this page, which you can just do a Google, a search in the search bar for industry engagement opportunities. So an internship is an opportunity to engage with industry. Our design sprints that are coming up at the end of the year are opportunities to engage with industry. All right, so at the moment here we have listed our internship information, and there's a heap of info here. There's a list of current internship opportunities, of which some might be relevant, some may not, some might be exactly your passion, some might not, but you might still have the skill set, so it still might be worth contemplating, just to add that extra feather, that extra point of difference. And then down the bottom here, you'll see internship expression of interest. Now, if I click on it, it doesn't take me to the page because I'm not a student, so I'm not entitled to express interest. But here's what's interesting about getting your foot in the door. Now, this expression of interest sends a message to Katie Theobald, who looks after all of our internships and industry engagement, and it tells her what your interests are because it's a full form that provides a heap of information to her. Now, I will guarantee you that at least once a month, probably more than that at the moment, what we're finding is companies are ringing Katie saying, hey, look, we've got a small project. We can't afford a research assistant at the moment, or we can't afford a full-time position at the moment. Do you have a student who could do an internship for 3 months to help us solve this problem? Now, situations like that happen all of the time. And often what happens is they say, we need someone next week, or we need someone within 2 to 3 weeks. And that doesn't give Katie long enough to put the article or the information on the website and advertise it. So therefore she goes to her list of people from the expression of interest to determine who would fulfill those skill sets, and sends them a note to say, hey, this opportunity's arisen, would you like to apply? Now, this is a perfect real world example of how getting a foot in the door, or how the hidden job market works the same for internships, okay? So it's about having your name somewhere, letting people know who you are and what you're interested in, so that when positions arise, boom, they send you a note or think of you. So I'll just close that up for the moment and come back to our slides. Just do my share screen. There we go. So the last piece of getting a foot in the door is about self-promoting. So by updating your LinkedIn profile, writing posts or contributing to others' posts, showing recruiters that you're open for work, those kinds of things are really important, okay? And they're just the other piece. It doesn't mean you need to spend an hour every day, but at least an hour a week if you're in your final year, at least an hour a fortnight if you're in mid-years, and at least an hour every 3 weeks, maybe 4 at the tops if you're in the start of your candidature, okay? Now, how do you show recruiters that you're open? All right, let me show you. Just pull this one up. Okay, so if you are in your LinkedIn profile, if you're in your LinkedIn profile, you'll see this is just my LinkedIn profile here. You'll see the section here under your name, show recruiters you're open to work. If you click on that, there's a few points they require you to respond to or answer. And then what happens is on your photo at the top here, they place a badge that says open to work, and it notifies recruiters that you're open to work. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to ring you or get straight onto things, but it just, again, provides the opportunity to let people know you're available for work. So if you're in your final year, I'd highly recommend that, particularly if you're in your last 3 to 6 months. That's something important to do. Okay, let's jump back to the slides. Okay, so the final step of job searching. the actual process of searching for the advertised jobs, which we know only represents 20%, but it's still an important piece, obviously. So where do you search? There's a range of job search platforms. So seek.com.au is Australia's probably most relevant. There's also a website, the Uni Jobs. So if you just type in the Uni Jobs, there's a website all around university-based jobs. LinkedIn also has jobs. So that's definitely worth looking at. And this is why I raised LinkedIn right at the start, because they're really building their opportunity for people to network and recruit, which was not part of the plan originally. So that's a critical piece for you in terms of your job search process. So you'll simply go back up to the search function at the top in your LinkedIn profile and type in, think of those keywords, go back to your points of difference, go back to your skills, your technical and generic skills, but probably more your technical. And even if you want to just even type in research. It's very vague, but type in research and you'll have the option to choose research in terms of people, which will bring up a list of people who have research in their profile, or research in terms of jobs. And that will bring up a list of jobs that again have the keyword research in the job profile. Okay, and that can be really helpful for people to be thinking about what jobs are out there, and using LinkedIn you can see how many people have applied for the position and whether you have any connections to people who work in that company, which again could be a beautiful opportunity for an informational interview for those of you particularly in first year or middle years who are thinking, oh, I'd really love to work, let's go back with our scenario of CSIRO, really love to work for them. There's currently a job available, which I'm not ready for yet. However, I have a couple of connections in that organisation, which I'd completely forgotten. So I'm going to organise an information interview to learn a bit more about how they got in, what their journey's been to date, what the organisation's like to work for, all of those kinds of things. Okay, so they're just some tips for you. You can also utilise recruitment agencies. Now, there aren't many recruitment agencies that specialise in researchers, so you're going to have to do your homework. I would be looking up recruitment agency. I would use some keywords around research, PhD, MPhil, whatever it is that you think is most relevant to you, and see if there are any recruitment agencies. There are a couple in Australia that I have seen, but they often change depending on what the flavour of the job market is. So have a look at that, and that might be useful for you. And again, utilise your connections, all right? Search for jobs through your connections. Now, that's not asking people for a job, it's asking whether people perceive that jobs will open up in the next 12 months in this area, in this sector, in this research project. They're the kinds of questions to ask. Have they been able to secure ARC grants, CRC grants, or not? If they haven't, then that gives you a little bit more information about the financial position and whether opportunities will open or not. And finally, how do you search? Well, you have to go back to step number one and reflect on your transferable skills. What do I have to offer and what can I talk about? Because once you find jobs that you want to apply for, then you're stepping into the whole process of job applications, cover letters, CVs, selection criteria. And that's a whole other webinar that I will be running on the 7th of October. So that is a key piece. Second, broaden your search and your keywords. Okay, now I know each of you are more than likely extremely passionate about the research you're doing, about what you've been working on. But I guarantee you, you are not a university student who is working on a 4-year thesis. I perceive you as a professional who is currently in the process of conducting a 4-year project that you are managing with deadlines, with people, with resources, with financial commitments, with budgets, you know, that has a significant impact on what you're doing and what the outcomes and impacts will be. This is talking about you with the professional hat on, not the student hat. Okay, so when you think about those broader skills that you have, you might be able to broaden your search so that you can secure some work because you're better off securing a little bit of work that utilizes some of your skills than not getting any work because there's nothing in your area. Okay, so really think about what you have to offer. Use LinkedIn Jobs to determine any of your connections, which I mentioned just before, and attend the job applications webinar on the 7th of October. They're probably all of the key points for you regarding job search strategies. Now, yes, the pandemic has significantly impacted things, but there are really key important skills that you're developing throughout candidature that you really need to speak to. And I really highly encourage you to start thinking about what they are. Now, the rest of the resources in this section under job search strategies in our Blackboard site provides a lot of information. I have a lot of resources, a lot of articles. We have the HDR guide to informational interviewing there for you. And there's information around some case studies, because I know that's really helpful for you. So there's a range of videos of case studies of PhD graduates who have just had amazing career journeys. And those journeys have stepped sideways and backwards and forwards, but they've still been able to leverage at each point and headed in very different directions. An ecologist who's gotten more into the technology space and is able to see the connection. Now, often we can't see the connections, but by utilising some case studies, it can be really helpful. I hope that's been really helpful for you, and I look forward to sharing some more career education with you over the next year. Thank you.